step right up. Today, we are diving into the dazzling, sometimes dizzying world of Pop Mart. You know, the company behind those wildly popular collectible figures, often found hiding inside those, well, mysterious blind boxes. They seem to be absolutely everywhere lately.
They really do. And based on the material you've shared, all these articles, financial breakdowns, market analyses, even notes on consumer feedback and online discussions, it's clear that everywhere translates into serious market impact. I mean, the data from 2024 is pretty staggering.
Staggering is right. We're seeing reports of record revenue, what was it, exceeding 13 billion RMB, and net profit hitting a new high at 3.4 billion RMB in 2024. The growth numbers just jump off the page. Revenue up over 106% year on year, and net profit soaring by nearly, 186%? It's kind of incredible.
Yeah, and the momentum hasn't stopped. The sources show that Q1 2025 revenue surged an incredible 165% to 170% year on year. And get this, their U.S. revenue in just Q1 of 2025 surpassed their entire U.S. revenue for all of 2024. Yep. So from a pure numbers perspective, the short-term forecast, according to these sources, is just explosive continued growth.
So you see this picture of phenomenal financial success and rapid expansion painted by the numbers. Yet, when you look across the different sources, you get, a range of perspectives on what this all really means. Some analysis is highly optimistic, seeing a well-managed company with strong financials and real global potential.
Right. They highlight that Pop Mart has pioneered something significant, this idea of monetizing emotional value and building an IP universe that resonates deeply with young consumers. They argue the recent surge isn't just fleeting hype, but built on really strategic shifts.
But then you also have perspectives that are much more cautious. Even within analyses that acknowledge the strong fundamentals and growth, there are warnings, right? About intense competition, internal challenges like maintaining IP appeal, and questions about the sustainability of the model, especially maybe the financial side.
And that caution extends to market watchers and even consumers. We see discussions pointing to potential concerns around valuation, but also managing quality and whether these products are just, frivolous buys vulnerable to economic downturns.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This huge success story happening right alongside these rings of caution and different interpretations of the future. As we start to peel back the layers of Pop Mart, hearing about these massive growth numbers and the varied viewpoints, what comes to mind for you listening? What are your initial thoughts on how something can be experiencing such explosive growth, yet still face these debates about its long-term sustainability?
It really speaks to the complexity, I think, translating a cultural phenomenon into a durable, high-growth business model. It's tough. The numbers are undeniable, sure, but the nuances of the market and consumer behavior, that's where the questions come in.
Okay, let's get into the why behind this phenomenon then. Let's unpack how Pop Mart got here and what drives those numbers. The sources take us back to 2010, when Pop Mart began not as a toy company, but as a general variety store selling, just about everything.
Yeah, and apparently they initially struggled against established retail and, the rise of e-commerce. It wasn't easy. The pivotal moment came in 2015. The founder, Wang Ning, was inspired by the Japanese gashapon trend, those little capsule toy machines.
Ah, right. And that inspiration led to the strategic shift, to focus on blind boxes.
Exactly. Initially, they relied on licensed IPs like Sunny Angel and Baby Molly, selling figures produced by others. Just distributing them, basically.
But a crucial step happened around 2016 when some of those licenses ended, wasn't it?
That's it. They shifted tactics, actively pursuing copyright partnerships with original designers. This led to the launch of their own IP blind box series, the Molly Zodiac series, also in 2016.
And that marked the transformation. The Molly series wasn't just another product, it established Pop Mart as an IP operator, someone who creates and manages intellectual property, not just sells licensed goods.
Right, that became the engine of their growth, really.
Which brings us to the core product strategy, the blind box model itself.
Yeah, the sources describe it pretty clearly, figures hidden in identical boxes, sold at a relatively accessible price point around, 59 to 69 RMB, aimed squarely at young consumers.
And here's where the magic happens, from a psychological perspective, it seems. It's the thrill of unpredictability. You don't know what figure you're getting until you open it.
There's delayed gratification, the drive to complete a collection, and crucially, the allure of rare, hidden figures inserted into only a few boxes.
That's scarcity. That must be a powerful driver.
Oh, absolutely. It fuels what one analysis calls addictive or maybe philatelic consumption, the joy of collecting like stamps. And it creates a secondary market where those hidden figures can command prices far exceeding the original retail price, sometimes over 1,000 RMB compared to the 59 RMB initial cost.
Wow.
And this doesn't just happen randomly. It's a calculated part of their pricing and promotion strategy, leveraging that perceived value and that sort of gambler's mentality.
Now let's glance at the financial picture presented by the sources, specifically looking at the period from 2018 to 2022. This is before the recent explosion we talked about. When we look at gross profit margin.
Yeah, we see PopMart's gross margin was pretty solid during this time.
Yep.
It fluctuated a bit, but generally between the high 50s and low 60s percentage-wise.
And how did that compare to others?
Well, compared to peers mentioned in the sources like Lego, Disney, playholding PopMart was generally in the mid-range. Not quite as high as Disney's, which was apparently around 70%, but often better than or comparable to Lego and playholding. It indicates decent operational efficiency, in producing and selling their goods during this period.
Okay, and the net profit margin, that's after all expenses, right?
Right. This saw more fluctuation. It hovered around 20% for a few years, peaked in 2019 actually, but then saw quite a significant drop. It hit 10.3% in 2022.
What about the peers then?
Peers and net profit varied wildly. Playholding was unstable. Disney also fluctuated a lot. Lego maintained a relatively stable net margin, similar to PopMart's level in the earlier years, and actually overtook PopMart in 2020. So that drop in PopMart's net margin in 2022 is really notable in this comparison. It reflected a challenging year where domestic revenue softened, partly due to pandemic impacts on physical stores. This is what one source called a growth bottleneck.
Right, okay. And this context makes the turnaround we discussed at the start even more impressive. They didn't just recover, they launched into, hyper-growth mode after 2022.
Exactly. Revenue more than doubled from 2022 to 2024, and that net profit jumped from 1.23 billion in 2023 to that massive 3.4 billion in 2024 we mentioned.
And the gross profit margin bounced back too.
Bounced back strongly. It reached 66.8% in 2024, putting it at a peak, even surpassing some of the peer comparisons from the earlier period. It's quite the rebound.
So how did they engineer this dramatic post-2022 surge? Several key drivers really stand out across the sources. First, and perhaps most significant according to some analyses, is overseas expansion.
Yes, this has become a crucial secondary growth engine. You look at the share of revenue from outside mainland China, it jumped from less than 10% in 2022 to nearly 39% in 2024. That's a huge shift.
And they really pushed the physical presence.
Massively. They rapidly increased their physical footprint, going from just one overseas store in 2020 to 130 by 2024, and adding over 190 vending machines to Robo shops globally in that same period.
They've aggressively entered new markets across Europe, North America, Asia. I saw mentions of the UK, US, France, Malaysia, Vietnam.
Yeah, Italy, Spain, the list goes on. And they're putting flagship stores in really high-profile locations, like the Louvre in Paris, Oxford Street in London.
That sends a message.
It does. And the plans for 2025 show no signs of slowing down. About 100 new overseas stores planned, including these super flagships in major markets like the US, Thailand, France, Australia.
And North America specifically seems to be on fire for them.
Oh yeah, it's specifically called out for particularly explosive growth, reporting 895% year-on-year revenue growth in 2024. And they've built a significant membership base there too, apparently topping 1.7 million people.
Wow. A related driver mention is the shift to a direct-to-consumer model overseas, DTC. What does that mean in practice?
Well, it means they're increasingly selling directly to customers through their own channels, instead of relying solely on intermediaries or distributors.
And that helped.
Seems so. Moving to DTC overseas improved their reach and control. And we see this reflected in surging e-commerce revenue numbers from their international platforms in 2024. Think revenue growth rates of over 1,200% on their official website, over 650% on Shopee, and a staggering, 5,780% on TikTok and overseas markets.
5,780%.
Yeah, these aren't small increases. They're transformative jumps.
Yeah.
It really shows the power of that direct connection.
Okay, so geography was huge. What else? Product diversification seems key too. The sources highlight a focus on IP quality over just churning out lots of characters.
Definitely. They're expanding beyond the core blind box figures. It's not just about the little vinyl toys anymore.
Like the plush toys.
Exactly. New product lines like plush toys and the higher-end Mega Collection have become major revenue pillars. Plush toys in particular saw phenomenal growth. One report stated revenue grew, wait for it, 1,289% year-on-year in 2024.
Another crazy number.
Right. Contributing over 20% of total revenue just from plush. Combined, Plush and the Mega Series accounted for a substantial 35% of 2024 revenue. That shows a successful move beyond being seen only as a blind box company.
They're also emphasizing experiential retail, going beyond just shops to create themed spaces, pop-ups, art exhibitions.
Yeah, enhancing engagement, building a deeper connection with consumers, making it more of an event maybe?
And this ties into the broader theme of the emotional consumption model discussed in the sources, doesn't it?
It really does. The idea that it's not just buying a toy, it's about buying into an aesthetic, a feeling, a community. Pop Mart is positioning itself as something of a spiritual refuge or a form of self-expression for young people.
Moving beyond being just a lipstick effect purchase, a small, cheap treat during tough times.
Exactly. Moving towards being a lifestyle brand. We see this in how they're deepening IT development. Characters like Hirono aren't just figures anymore. They have expanded into apparel, home goods, even animated shorts and exhibitions, building a richer universe around the IP, trying to give them more depth, perhaps.
And other IPs like Lobby were discussed as becoming symbols of subculture and identity.
Right, partly fueled by endorsements from global celebrities like Lisa, Rihanna, Dua Lipa, people who align the brand with being culturally cool, I guess.
We also have some insights from that consumer questionnaire mentioned in one source. It had limitations, right? Small sample size, gender imbalance.
Yeah, definitely limitations to keep in mind. Only about 123 respondents, mostly female. But it still gives us a bit of a pulse on consumer attitudes.
And what did it show?
Well, the survey data aligns with the target demographic, mostly young urban females. It confirms high brand awareness and purchase intent among those who know the brand. When asked why they buy, the overwhelming reason was cute design. That really reinforces the power of their IP and aesthetics.
Makes sense. How do people hear about them?
Mostly social media, followed by friends and family. Word of mouth is still huge.
And regarding where they buy, did online dominate?
Actually, no. Retail shops came out on top as the most effective channel in that survey, suggesting the physical experience remains really important even with all the online growth.
Interesting. What about price perception?
That was mixed. About half felt the price was too high, while slightly less felt it was appropriate. It suggests there might be a perception gap on value for some consumers, despite other sources highlighting the accessible price point relative to, say, high-end art toys like Bear Bricks.
So some think it's affordable, others think it's pushing it.
Seems that way.
Yeah.
Satisfaction was generally high, though about 94% were satisfied to some degree, but recommendations were split almost 50-50.
So satisfied customers aren't necessarily becoming strong advocates.
Yeah, suggests there's maybe room to improve there, convert more satisfied buyers into promoters.
Okay, so we see a clear strategy, strong execution on expansion and diversification, and a deep connection with a specific consumer base driving that massive growth post-2022. However, as we touched on earlier, the sources also highlight significant challenges and, alternative perspectives on the road ahead.
Competition is definitely one. The industry is booming, but rivals are innovating. We see players like Top-Tay-OY, which is under Miniso, rapidly expanding. They have a similar model, but often at lower price points, particularly targeting maybe different city tiers.
And it's not just new players. Classic international IPs like Harry Potter, Disney, Chikawa, they're popular and leveraged by larger players like Miniso too. That must pose a challenge to Pop Mart's reliance on its original IPs.
It does, and internally there are challenges. Managing the life cycle of their IPs, ensuring newer characters can become hits as older ones potentially fade. That's tricky.
Plus the constant need for innovation to meet evolving consumer tastes. Some analyses noted that the lack of deep storylines for many characters could be a weakness compared to traditional entertainment IPs, like from Disney or something.
Right. And there have also been controversies reported. Criticism around their hunger marketing campaigns, like that one with KFC. It got flack for encouraging impulsive overconsumption, even leading to food waste, apparently.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. And quality issues.
Sources mention reports of product quality issues based on surveys, along with difficulties some consumers face with returns or exchanges. Suggests some operational areas might need strengthening as they scale so fast.
Then from a market perspective, the valuation is a big point of discussion. A price-to-earnings, or PE ratio, around 107 in 2024. That's high by many standards, isn't it?
It is quite high. It leads to debates about whether the current stock price is justified by future earnings potential, even with the strong growth they've shown.
And the stock has been volatile, even after good news.
Yeah, seeing dips even after reporting strong results. Plus, there have been notable stake sales by institutional investors, big ones in 2023 and again in April 2025.
So early backers selling off shares.
Well, these sales happen after the stock has surged dramatically. So some interpret it as profit-taking or maybe a reallocation of capital. It raises questions about long-term confidence from these large investors, even while the company's fundamentals look robust on paper. Insiders still hold a lot, though, over 40%.
Okay. And execution risk. Scaling so fast globally must be hard.
Absolutely. Navigating different cultural preferences, logistics, supply chains, regulations in all these diverse markets. It's complex, lots of places to stumble.
And the reliance on plush. While the growth is amazing.
Yeah, one view suggests that increasing reliance on any single product category, even if it's plush now instead of just blind boxes, could introduce risk if that segment faces specific headwinds or shifts in demand later on. Diversification is good, but maybe not too concentrated in the new thing either.
Finally, there's that perspective that sees Pop Mart products at their core as non-essential. Frivolous discretionary buys, as one comment put it.
Right. This view suggests they could be particularly vulnerable to sharp downturns if economic conditions force consumers to really tighten their belts and prioritize necessities over collectibles.
So bringing it all together, the sources paint a complex but ultimately pretty compelling picture of Pop Mart, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. They've transformed from a struggling variety store into a major player in this trendy toy and collectibles market. They mastered IP development, leveraged that blind box psychology, and built a brand that resonates emotionally with young consumers.
Their recent explosive growth, particularly driven by overseas expansion and diversifying into categories like plush, is undeniable. And it's backed by strong financial performance, especially that big turnaround.
Yet the market is intensely competitive. They face internal challenges in maintaining innovation and managing IP, controversies regarding marketing and quality, and this significant debate around their valuation and the sustainability of their growth amidst external economic risks and shifting consumer trends.
It's a story of remarkable recent success built on strategic pivots, isn't it? But one where the long-term picture, while potentially bright, is viewed through different lenses. Optimism on one side, caution on the other, based on how you weigh the data.
Exactly. Different sources emphasize different aspects: the innovative model, the global potential, versus the competition, the valuation concerns, the execution risks.
We've really gone through a lot of information from these sources today, looking at Pop Mart from so many angles: its finances, its strategy, what consumers seem to think, the market challenges. It's quite a complex picture. It went from a variety store, found its niche with blind boxes, became an IP operator, navigated a growth bottleneck, and then just exploded with overseas expansion, product diversification like plush, and really leaning into the emotional and cultural aspects of its brands.
And we've seen the differing perspectives on its future, from some seeing it as a potential stock to buy based on fundamentals and that growth trajectory, to others raising concerns about its valuation, the sustainability of the hype, and the competitive pressures from established giants and new rivals.
So what stands out to you after hearing all this? Can Pop Mart continue to translate these viral moments and this emotional connection into sustained long-term growth as it faces global competitors and, inevitably, evolving consumer preferences?
Yeah, and how will its IP universe stack up against entertainment giants with decades of storytelling behind them in the long run? That's a big question.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your throughs on the Pop Mart phenomenon or your point of views on the collectibles market overall? Let us know.